Hi everyone, it's Melanie of Art Studio 320, and this week's project is this giant armoire behind me. It has drawers on the inside. It even has cubbies. It is solid oak around the trim. I believe this is meant to look like bamboo. Whether it is or not, I'm not quite sure. So I'm going to have to think about what I want to do with this. These, I believe, well, this might be solid oak right here, but I believe on the centers of the drawers down here, these are a veneer. The trim is all solid oak. The sides are veneer. I have my work cut out for me. I have some ideas rolling around in my head, of course, and we will see if those come to fruition or not. Stick around. In order to do this job properly, I needed to take off these doors. And when you're taking off doors, you need to think about the hinges and how they're put on and what the best way to take them off is. What I find is you take a screw off from each of the hinges and you just gradually take them off from the middle to the top to the bottom to the middle to... So you're avoiding any kind of undue pressure on any one of the hinges, and you're helping to protect the door from falling. I clean with vinegar and water. It's just 1 part vinegar to 1 part water. You can mix it any way you want. And I just use a bottle I got at Home Depot. I find that that's the cheapest way and it does the job. So why spend a lot of money on fancy cleaners when that works just fine? I just purchased these sponges recently. They're sanding sponges and they're by KAEDE and they really hold up very well. A lot of times when I'm using a sponge, they kind of disintegrate as I'm using them, but these really do last longer. You know, a lot of things say last longer on them. They really do. I will definitely buy these again. Two things I learned about this furniture after doing the end table from the same bedroom set last week. It is very easy to sand off the stain and the top coat from the veneer, but on the solid oak, it's a different story. It takes time and a lot of patience. Approaching these doors was a little bit of a challenge. I decided to try out one triangle with the citrus strip to see if I could strip off the stain and the top coat from what I now know is bamboo. More on that in a moment. This spot is the only place that I needed to repair. I used my plastic wood X, my wood filler that I really love, and it was easy to fix. Other than that, there was nothing wrong with this piece. Okay, now back to the doors. These were a real challenge to sand. You see me using all kinds of different things. Now that little chip brush I'm using is just to get rid of the dust between the crevices. But oh my goodness, I tried so many different ways to sand this bamboo. And the spot that I use a stripper, as you can see right here, I believe that the stripper and the moisture in the stripper made the bamboo collapse. So right here, I'm trying to give the bamboo some shape again. And it worked a little, and really overall, no one is going to know except you and I. Yep, you see this correctly. I am using my orbital sander on each individual tube of bamboo to try and get off the stain and the top coat mainly. And wow, it worked to some degree, but I just had to decide that I was going to do the best I could with what I had. And if I could do what I wanted on the bamboo, I would. And if I had to paint it solid, I would do that too. The color I'm using here is called Hazelwood by Fusion, and it's just a beautiful gray. It's very soft. When I start painting, I don't always know where I'm going, but usually the piece I'm working on will just kind of guide me. And I'm not kidding. It just sort of flows. And this trim around the bamboo, it was obvious to me that I needed to paint that because getting into those crevices was just too difficult. I needed to paint it. This is called pickling oak. It's a stain. And I'm not going to lie, I have trouble with deciding what to do with oak because I like to show wood grain and I want to show it in the best possible light. And I thought pickling oak would do it, but on this particular piece, it wasn't what I was going for. So I abandoned that pretty quickly, watered down the Hazelwood, and used it as a wash. And I do like the results. I thought it looked very nice. If you want to do a wash on your piece, I suggest you use a small amount of paint and you add water to that until it's transparent, but it still leaves some pigment behind, some color. And really that's up to you how much color you want and how thin and transparent you want it to be. You need to practice that. And don't be afraid. You can do it. Just realize that you can sand it back off if you don't like it. I'm testing out my paintbrushes to make sure they are all the right size for this part of my painting project. I have 7 colors that I have lined up in the order that I want them to appear on my door. Starting with Sacred Sage, then Goddess, Hazelwood comes next, then Blue Pine, Bellwood, Homestead Blue, and Bedford. These are all colors that I had in stock. I didn't go out and buy special colors. I just used what I had and created a palette that way. I have water in front of each one of those paint colors because I wanted to do a wash on the bamboo like I did on the rest of the piece. There was a chance that this wasn't going to work. It was water with a little bit of paint, and I had bamboo that had stain and top coat on it, and there was a chance that it was going to roll right off. And to be honest with you, it did in some areas. But what happened was I liked it. I think it looked cool. I think it looked rugged, kind of shabby chic, so I went with it. Now, just so you know, you are not going to get the same results as I would because I won't even get the same results if I try and do this again. It all depends on how you sanded it, and that's okay. It just go with what you have. The beauty of art is it's not an exact science. And make no mistake, art and science go hand in hand. As I went along, I tried different techniques, and I have to say there are benefits to doing it the way I'm doing it right now and benefits to doing it the way I did it in the beginning, one bamboo tube at a time. So I recommend doing it the way that's easiest for you. Back to the drawers. The center part here was veneer, and I thought about sanding it down enough so that I could do a wash on it. And then I thought, no, I want to show some solid Hazelwood. It's a pretty color. I think that it'll add interest to the piece. Instead of doing a wash on the whole thing, I like to do a variety of things just to keep it interesting. Not to keep it busy, but to keep it interesting. There's a fine line there for sure. I am only in this back-breaking position right now, sanding the top, because this armoire was so tall. There are an endless amount of ways that you could paint this piece. And in this case, the inside of this piece on the top where the cubbies are, there was nothing wrong with it. And I thought that I would probably have more trouble trying to refinish it since those cubbies didn't really come out. I thought it would be best to just leave it alone. Gravity. It did not help me here. I did a whole wash on the top, and as you will see, I ended up going back and sanding a little bit on the left side. For some reason, instead of going all the way across like I had been doing, I changed up my technique there for a little while. So I went back, sanded it off, and just redid it. No big deal. It happens sometimes. I think I may have forgotten to mention that after you put down your wash, you go back and wipe it down. And really, again, this is a technique that is really up for your interpretation, so you do it however you want. Just be sure that if you're putting a lot of water on there with the paint, that you don't just let it sit there. You don't want any puddles left behind. To me, these spaces where these drawers are right now are the same, and yet they were not the same. I can't explain it, but there is one drawer for one space in most cases. There are always touch-ups to be done, and that's what I'm doing right now. It's probably about 10:30 at night at this point. I like the idea of a darker hardware, so I decided to wipe these all off because they needed it, and then spray paint it with I believe, yeah, it's a oil rubbed bronze. I really like this color. It's very rich. These finishing pads are essential in getting the finish that you want for your final product. It just makes everything smooth, and when you're using a paint wash, you will find that it creates kind of a rough, chalky feel, and you don't want that. The finishing pad I'm using right now it's 2000 grit, and it's kind of like rubbing it with a piece of leather, and you can do that with a spray painted piece. So one of those little boo-boos that you can make what I had just made. I did this side, and I really thought that's all I needed to do, except this little part right here is going to show, and I didn't spray paint that. So I had to take them all off, and I'm going to spray paint them now. I'm glad I found it now before I put the doors on. I need to remember to spray both sides because, yeah. This is the part I always dread because hanging doors can be quite a challenge when you're by yourself. And I had planned on asking for Phil's assistance, but he was at work and I wasn't going to wait. I needed to get it done. So I found a sanding sponge of my Gator sponges that did the trick. I had it underneath and it was just the right size, and because it's squishy, I could push it down to where I needed it to be. So it would hold the hinge in place where the holes were, so I could screw it in without too much trouble. Now, it's never simple, but oh my gosh, this made it so much easier. I only had one screw on each side that was a challenge, and after that, I could get them all in. So next time you have to put on doors like this, check it out. Try it. Try finding something that's a little squishy, but the right size to put underneath your door to give you a little bit more stability. Well, friends, that's all I have for you this week. Whew. I had some reservations about this project only because I wanted to make a statement piece. So I knew that it was going to take some time, and it did take some time. I decided to just lean into whatever the challenges were and kind of go with it. And I think that is the best way to go about it, because if you're fighting with something, I'll give you the example of the bamboo. The bamboo was difficult to sand. It had a thick layer of top coat on it. I decided instead of trying to sand each individual tube of bamboo, I would do the best I could, and then I would go from there. Now, originally I was going to use stain. That wasn't going to work. So what I decided to do was, just like with the rest of it, I used a wash. I picked out my color palette, and when I put them on the bamboo, sometimes it sort of resisted it. So I'd put a little more on, and then I'd wipe it off. And it really worked well. It turns out to be kind of a shabby chic look, and I'm very pleased with how it turned out. I had no idea how it was going to turn out, but there's the thing. That's the key right there. Just allow the piece to tell you what it wants. I know that sounds crazy, but I kind of think of it that way, because if you're always struggling to do it the way that you think it should be and it is resisting, maybe just lean into it. Now, sometimes it's not going to look great and you'll have to rethink it, but in this case, I think it was successful. This design I chose, I picked the order and the color palette and all of that, but I got the idea from a piece of furniture, and instead of bamboo, they would be glass tubes, and it was on the doors, so that was similar, but they were end tables, and these end tables were over $11,000. And they are beautiful. They're pieces of art. I love them. And I thought, man, I'd really like to incorporate that idea into one of my pieces at some point. So when this came into my possession, I thought, that might be the chance I have to create that look. I'm pleased with it. I'm very happy with it. I'm definitely going to try it again. Yes, it took time. Yes, it took patience, but it was so worth it. Thanks for being here. Good luck on your next project. See you next time.
You can do it.
Open air, side by side we sway there in all the colors. Lonesome dove folded on the lawn chair in all the colors. Summer love. Remember when we were getting nowhere fast, when the garden won't stop giving